Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Bitcoin Lore channel. This is the first video of a 15-part series entitled Fundamentals of Finance and Bitcoin. In this first part of that 15-part series, we will delve into the difference between money and wealth. The reason why we call it the money lie is because people chase after money, but they don't really understand what money truly is. If someone is going to spend 80, 100, 120,000 hours, half or more of their lives working for themselves, for a company, in order to provide goods and services in exchange for money, they should really take the time to learn what money truly is. We have to understand that there's three fundamental properties of money. Money is exchange in terms of a medium of exchange. It's also a store of value. The value captured in the time and energy that someone puts in exchange for goods and services. Work. It's also a unit of measurement. Any fiat currency can be used as a unit of measurement. Fiat currencies compared and exchanged with each other show that some fiat currencies are strong and others are weak. The British pound is stronger than the euro, which is stronger than the US dollar, and so on, at least at the time of the recording of this video. The medium of exchange part is pretty easy to understand. The wealth part is not as easy as to understand because usually money in the form of medium of exchange is a given. It's an obvious fact. But in terms of a store of value, keeping money in a bank, savings account, checking account, in a vault at home, in a wallet, is not such a difficult thing to grasp. But when someone starts talking about things like energy, time, exchanging one's energy and time for money, then people start to think that it's not true. It's just an idea. It's just a theory. But human time and energy must be thought of as the storing of value in the form of some type of money. Traditional ways and systems of money are fiat currency. However, in this day and age, with technological advancements, we have the digital form of money, currency, credit, in the form of the first cryptocurrency ever launched, January of 2009, namely Bitcoin. Bitcoin helps to store value, which is time and energy put forth in order to secure, acquire a form of money, medium of exchange, store of value. Now, this energy has to be understood as transforming into money through work via service or goods that are built and provided for. Going beyond that, this preservation can come in many forms. Traditionally, precious metals like gold and silver have been used to store the value across a long period of time, decades, hundreds of years, and so on. Just as there are good or stronger fiat currencies versus weaker, the example I gave earlier was the British pound versus the euro versus the US dollar, so too there are bad ways of the system itself, not just distinctions in the system. That is to say, when around the time of the ending of World War II in 1945, it was decided that the US dollar would be the world's currency. And many years after that, in 1973, when at the time President Richard Nixon decided to take the US dollar off the gold standard, these type of things help contribute to a bad, eroding, deflationary, opposite of way of happening in terms of the debasing of the money that's being made. Another way to say that is money in terms of fiat currency that's printed without precious metals like gold and silver backing it up. The only thing backing it up would be the confidence in the government. And that's just not enough in order to hedge against inflation. So the purchasing power via the endless printing of money inflates it such that goods and services cost more and more, commensurate to about 7% of M2 money printing, as they call it. Whereas Bitcoin, being a decentralized financing system, is deflationary. An example of that would be 17 years of Bitcoin at the time of the recording, from January 2019 to May of 2026. What used to cost thousands of Bitcoin to purchase a car or a house now costs tens. That's deflation, where an asset's value is not losing its purchasing power, whereas the opposite of that is the purchasing power is going up because it's deflationary. The reason for this deflationary phenomenon is because of the scarcity on the issuance side. That is to say, there will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever minted. We can do an entire deep dive, and we will, as time passes, into the dynamics of how all of that works. But for now, the important thing in this first part of a 15-part series of the fundamentals of finance and Bitcoin is to understand the money lie. That's a lie that's told to us and we tell ourselves, in terms of having fiat money is not equivalent to having wealth because of inflation, deflation, purchasing power. That problem is solved with Bitcoin, and we will do deep dives into why that's the case. The takeaway from this video is that bad money, fiat currency, erodes slowly and silently a person's potential for wealth. Money is really a time storage technology where you put in time in exchange for fiat currency, which can be used to buy fractions of a Bitcoin. This is the important thing to understand. We are not just talking about finance, wealth, Bitcoin in an isolated state. What we're trying to do is bring critical thinking. We will do deep dives into what critical thinking is, and emotional intelligence. We will do deep dives into what emotional intelligence means and how those two together come to form a holistic, comprehensive, asking right questions, imagining right images, and bridging the gap between the question that's formed properly, the image that's formulated, and getting the correct answer. And not only that, unlike 90% or more of situations where people brush passions, emotions, affections, feelings aside and fool themselves into thinking rationality and logic can exist outside of emotions, we will embrace them because we will come to realize that mindsets are only a certain part of an equation. Skill sets are also needed to bring everything together. Another way of saying it is critical thinking is inquiring, imagining, and getting correct insights. Emotional intelligence is actionable insights. And when you bring both those together after spending months and years of reflecting and becoming a critical thinker, then what happens is you've, like a flagship digital mirrorless camera, you've dialed in all the right settings. And so when you know what you're doing, you can get great results. Whereas if someone does not have the proper mindsets and skill sets, and they're not, figuratively speaking, dialed in the proper way, they're going to make a shipwreck out of their financial lives. They're not going to be able to not only understand traditional economics, finance, money, history of money, but also they won't be able to understand what's happening with the digitization of that in form of cryptocurrencies in general, Bitcoin in particular, and be able to triangulate where that moving goalpost is and how they could allocate the stored energy of fiat in terms of swapping that out for Bitcoin. In this first episode, we've started the process of a 15-part series of setting the foundation for the Bitcoin lore by talking about the fundamentals of finance, the fundamentals of decentralized finance, and also starting the process of being open-minded to what we mean by critical thinking and emotional intelligence. The Bitcoin lore is meant to be not only a growing understanding of the amazing technology, mindset, and skill set of Bitcoin, but also bringing that Bitcoin story to somehow be interweaved with your own story so you can reap the benefits of Bitcoin. I'll end this episode by saying that Bitcoin is more than a cryptocurrency, the first one. It's more than hardware and software, SHA-256 protocols, every 10 minutes Bitcoin being mint, scarce resource, Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin nodes, running Bitcoin Core. It's also a mindset and a skill set. It's a type of thing where people eventually that are open-minded and start realizing all of the questions that they have, one by one, is being answered, and they can see in a comparison and contrast of traditional finance and money, the superior benefits and added values that Bitcoin has to offer. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.